Well, since most of the people are here, can I just do it?
Yeah, do it real quick.
Okay, my mother is turning 90. She has dementia. She doesn't quite understand all this shutdown and crap. So I'm trying to expand what I did last year. So if you would kindly consider sending her a birthday card, if you have paper and pencil, I can give you her name and
Well, hold on. We'll put it in the chat somewhere. Who's got access to the chat? Ah, I disappeared. I made myself disappear.
I see you.
Who's got access to the chat, and we could put it in the chat. Or if you folks just want to write it down real quick, shoot. Anybody?
I don't see a chat.
No.
Okay.
Here's Barry.
Chris. Last name is Roth, R-O-T-H. Her address is P.O. Box 322 in Saugatuck, 49453.
Cool. For those of you who just got on, Linda's mother, Chris Roth, 90th birthday?
90th.
Birthday. And since we're still in the midst of a pandemic, if you're so inclined to send her a card, that would be fantastic.
And it's okay if she's never met you, because she got cards last year from people she didn't even know who they were.
Yeah, she walks around in our parking lot, does her routine of getting her lap in. She's a good age.
Taking out her garbage, that little Meyer grocery bag, that's her garbage.
That's exactly right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'll pay attention. I've made Jim a co-host, but let me also make Ken a co-host before I forget about it. I'll also make a co-host because we've got two presentations today. So let me get rid of this. View all. Come on. No. All right. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and I'll do a quick roll call. So now with our pandemic related things, when we do the roll call, if you could say here and then where you're at. And for example, if I were at home, I'd say here, Garnet Lewis, City of Saugatuck, Allegan County, Michigan. So we just need to do that because we're doing remote meetings. So, so Linda Escott.
Here, Linda Escott, City of Saugatuck, Allegan County.
All right, Barry Johnson.
Here, Barry Johnson, City of Saugatuck, Allegan County.
Got it. Kelly Roach.
Here, Kelly Roach, City of Saugatuck, Allegan County.
All right, Rana is absent. Kathy North. I know she's on the phone. She's muted.
Sorry.
It's all good.
I'm here. I am driving around somewhere in Holland. I'm not sure which, I don't even know what county it is.
Yeah. Ottawa.
Ottawa County.
All right, Demetria Terrian.
So, City of Douglas, Allegan County, Planet Earth.
Daniel.
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
All right, Mark is not here. Lori.
Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
Very good. And Patrick. I saw him. You're muted, bud.
Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
All right, very good. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. We've got two presentations today, so I'm going to kind of move us through real quick. I don't see anybody else on the line other than our contingent, but if there's anyone who wants to make public comment, they can do so at this time. Once, twice, three, you're done. All right, you got a copy of the minutes. Just need a motion to approve. Motion to approve and second of the minutes, please.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes, DeFranco.
And this is Escott, and I second.
All right, any discussion on the minutes? All right, with that, I'll call the roll. Let's see, who called it? Daniel?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Demetria?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Garn? Yes. All right, very good. Agenda, we're not going to worry about. I don't have any changes to the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so I'm going to get us going because I know Jim's got a hard stop. Two, I don't want to say quick, but about 30-minute presentations each. With this, I'll just turn it over to Jim Yost, who is our resident composting expert and is going to give us an update and some educational info on composting. Jim.
Thank you, Garn.
You bet.
So before I get into wormy stuff, we'll catch up on some of the stuff that's been going on here. Just last week, I spoke with Emmett County, kind of taking some notes, Miss Walker, Lindsay Walker, on their commercial composting operation up there. So I've got a few notes. Most of it for me was review, but again, I work in this industry. So I did take some notes of things that I thought maybe would be helpful. We could share maybe further down the line. But before I jump into wormies, I also have Kelly. We met yesterday, was it? Or maybe 2 days ago? Things have been so busy. But Kelly and Lori and Demetria, and who am I missing? Anyone else? We all met as the subcommittee for composting. And Kelly has a few notes from that she's going to share. And then I'll jump into wormies real fast.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jim. So just in the interest of communication, because we have so much going on, we just want to make sure that everyone in this committee knew that we have the upcoming residential composting pop-up workshop. So that is going to be April 24th at 9:30 in the morning. And we kept it at the 312 Ferry Street. So that's going to be outdoors and, weather dependent, and we'll just deal. And so I just wanted to let everybody know so far what we've done as far as publicity is Rana has been kind enough to put together a little banner. Daniel sent that out, and I believe, Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, that went to the whole group here. Yep. Okay. So it went to everybody. So check your emails. So far, I've sent that out to all 3 municipalities. So they're going to be posting that on their social and their websites and pushing it out in e-newsletters in the next week and a half. So that'll go out. Kim Sharda at the school has it. So that'll go out to all parents of DES in middle school, high school. And then I've sent it to the First Congregational Church to send out to their congregation, things of that nature. So what I would ask of this group is if you can just take a look at that. There's content attached to it as well, just regular content in the banner. Groups that you're involved with that you think would be interested in this, if everyone could just send a couple emails so that we make sure that we're kind of hitting all different target groups in Saugatuck Douglas, that would be wonderful. So, and then again, that's next weekend. So if you can send them out this week, that would be ideal, just to make sure that people have time to schedule for that. And that'll be Jim speaking on, basic composting tips. Okay. And then the other thing that came out of our subcommittee meeting was that we are trying to plan for the second half in terms of what we want to do with composting. And we realized we kind of have a lot of crossover with what we want to do with 2 of the other subcommittees, which is the one that is whoever's speaking with the businesses downtown and what the business interest is with composting, because that would be likely the next step. We'll see kind of what the success is with this pop-up that we're doing for residential, and then move it to the businesses to try and educate them on what could be done. So we don't have to discuss it here, but I'm hoping that who's heading that one up, the businesses downtown?
I believe Rana is working on that.
Yeah, Rana, myself, I think you might be a part of that.
Okay,
I
so
don't have my stuff with me. Sorry.
All right, so I'll get with you, Garn and Rana, and then we can kind of talk, and then we'll go back to our subcommittee and see how we can work, just so we're not doubling up on our efforts. And then the other one, Garn, is I think you're heading up all of the condo associations. Is that you and someone else?
Mark and I. Yes.
Okay,
Mark.
so if we can get with you 2 and just kind of see if you guys have names or, condo complexes that you've talked to that are interested, and then maybe we could potentially set something up individually for that. So I don't want to take a ton of time on it, but if we can just do that, then we don't have to double up on our efforts. Okay.
All right. And real quick, I'll add, Daniel got it posted on the Tri-Community Recycling Facebook page, but by the authority vested in me, I made it our Earth Day event. So
Perfect.
It's not quite the date, but it's close enough. Earth Weekend. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. All right. That's it from me, you guys.
All right, then. Oh man, my eyes are just not what they used to be. I'm going to share here. And it's not letting me share my screen. There we go. All right, so this might take a second to load. Let me know when you can see it. We're good? All right. All right, so some of you have seen this before. I think I did like a 3-minute rundown a couple weeks back. But there's the logo. In the sake of full disclosure here, I have been on and off the payroll of this company. It's owned by my brother-in-law, and my sister is the one that designed this logo. So I'm a little bit biased. Basics of what we do. We try to take waste materials and try to upcycle them to their highest potential for the farming industry. Basically, we say ecology, but most of it does end up in some type of agriculture, whether it's a backyard garden or a larger scale farming operation. We practice vermicompost, which is fancy talk for we make the worms eat it and then we use their poop. Our operation right now is located in Jenison, west side of Michigan, and we are there. We just got an extension to be there through October. We have to be out on November 1st. So we have just a 1/4 acre there. And on that 1/4 acre, we have a 5,000 square foot hoop house. And then we use the space that surrounds it as well. Right now we have, I think it's 321, if I remember the number right, customers in Grand Rapids. That is mostly households. So the residential pickup service uses 5-gallon watertight buckets, and we pick up every other week. So it's 2 pickups a month. We would like to get that a little bit different because when someone misses a pickup, we end up with month-old scraps, and that is pretty gross. So down the line, we'd like to try to do weekly if we can, or at least supplement with a drop-off service. For our commercial service, we use 20-gallon brute containers, and pickup varies based on the business. Like our juice bars, we pick up twice a week. Schools, we pick up once a week. So it just kind of depends on what that is and what their service requires. Here's the why, and I don't think I need to spend too much time on this with this crew, but this is what a normal landfill site would look like. You have organic waste getting buried deeper and deeper in the landfill, and as a result, it becomes anaerobic. So without oxygen, you then get bad bacteria that create methane, and that's what you see here, the CH4 and the carbon dioxide then go up into the atmosphere. They get trapped, and then they stay in the atmosphere, and it traps the heat rather. Long wave radiation kind of moves slow, and it hits those chemicals and it gets bounced back down. Whereas the short wave radiation coming from the sun can get through those chemicals. It has enough energy to penetrate, but then it can't leave once it tries to leave as long wave radiation. So one of the big problems with organic waste, besides the methane and carbon dioxide adding to global warming, is that organic waste is mostly water. So then it breaks down and you get massive pools inside these liners that are at the bottom of the landfill. And eventually, if one of those liners breaks, you get all the spillage of the chemicals. And all of us here are familiar with what might happen from there. So enough on that. Here's what we do at our greenhouse. Here on the left, that's our hoop house. This is 2 winters ago. It still looks pretty much the same, but the snow thankfully has left. We can fit, this is still the same van we use as well. Year 3 or 4, actually, I think now. We can fit 50 of these 5-gallon buckets in this van. So that is our capacity currently per trip that we go out. Here's another photo. This is in early November. We do collections with local schools and we pick up pumpkins. This is something we do for free because the pumpkins are actually so valuable to us. The worms absolutely love them, and it becomes like a big reproduction party. So it's a good time. Here we have a windrow. Windrow is fancy for putting compost outside and letting nature do its thing. This is just the very beginning of our step. So we take it outside here, and this is where we kind of dump the buckets so that we can wash them until we have space on the inside, which you'll see in a second. And we mix this with manure from local farms and then mulch from local tree services here. That is my niece having fun while I'm trying to work. Here is a static bin, aerated static bin. This is the first one I ever built. They look a little bit different now, but this is still the same concept. This one's nice and clean. So we load these up, and then depending on how dense the material is, we can put 6 to 8 cubic yards. If we go with leaves and things in the fall, we can really pile it up high and get closer to 8. But then at this time of year where it's more food scrap and mulch and more dense things, we stick closer to 6 so that we don't break anything. And these boards have actually already started to warp from the moisture, and will be changing as we scale. So we fill it up. It's got a fan down here at the bottom. It's on a timer, and that prevents us from having to turn these piles to keep them from going stagnant and killing everything. We want to keep air in there to keep the life alive. So in the end, what we're really selling is biology, and we use the compost kind of as a medium for putting the life together. So here are the fans running. You see the steam coming off, prevents us again from having to use diesel fuel, labor, and the tractor. And then about 2 weeks later, we open it up, and that's kind of what it looks like. Almost, it's sanitary. It's killed all the germs and things like that, but it is not quite ready to be used. It's just ready to feed to worms. This is thermophilic composting. This is a chart that I took off the web, and here's a quote down here, or a citation down here at the bottom. So this is for a standard windrow. So this is not an aerated bin like we have, but this is more to show you what we're trying to do in this thermophilic stage here in the middle. So on the y-axis, we have temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, and on the x-axis, we have days and time in days. So the goal for composters to make this sanitary and clean and safe is to get your compost above this 120-degree threshold, heat it up, but then try to keep it from going above 160, because then you start to kill the beneficial life. So this kind of shows you the time it would take in a normal windrow. So we're looking at about a month, and really it takes way longer than that, because what they'll do is as it scales down to about 120, they actually have to turn it, and then it heats back up to 160 again. So this process actually takes several months. I'm going to flip over, and I copied on top of that what we do. That's the orange line. So the orange line here in our bins, you can see how much faster it heats up, and then how much faster it starts to cool down. And that is based on this tight environment and those constant airflow that we pump in every 60 minutes. We pump in air for 30 seconds. So we're actually able to accomplish what would happen in nature over the course of a couple months. We can actually do it in a couple weeks. So in 2 weeks, our stuff is safe for the worms, and it won't cause any problems with like invasive species, seeds, or things that could be in there. Now, after the 2 weeks, that's actually a pretty small tractor, but we head up there with the tractor and we just unload these things and we stick them into these rows. We actually have 3 of these bins right now. At one time we had 4, but we found out we didn't actually need the 4th. We needed more worm row space. So on the right here, then you'll see where we spread all this stuff out in these long rows. And then on the tarp here is stuff that's actually finished. I spread that out in order to dry it. We have a few leaks in the roof, and some stuff will never dry if we don't move it and spread it out, unfortunately. So that's what's going on that gray tarp. So inside the worm rows, we're going to add the worms once it cools down to below 100 degrees. We used to wait longer, but we found that 100 works fine. The worms just go where they need to go to stay safe. So at 100 degrees, once it drops below, we can add worms. Then we use compost teas to add more life to the rows. And then also something called Bokashi, which we used, and I'll talk about here in just a minute. We use spent beer grain currently from Brewery Vivant in Grand Rapids, and it's another form of composting that we use. But then the end product is called Bokashi. And then here you can see our clovers. I think this is winter rye, the taller stuff. We use cover crops. These fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, and then they pull it down into their bodies, and then eventually ends up in our worm row. And anyone who is into agriculture knows nitrogen is a huge part of biomass and crop yield. So once we have all that stuff in place, that whole time we're watering. We have some mist irrigation that we added to just recently. And we're checking for temperature. If you see a spike in temperature, that means we probably have a pocket that got anaerobic and it wasn't finished. And then we have to take that pocket out and put it back in the bin to cook it again. Here we have the picture of the red wiggler. That is what we use for our worm operation. Red wigglers prefer to stay in like the top 1.5 feet or so of topsoil. So they actually are what eat the organic matter in the soil. Earthworms, on the other hand, dig deeper and they're more eating minerals and making those plant ready. So they're both beneficial, but the red wiggler is what we like for organic matter. And our products, here is a cross section. You can see the fungal growth on top. This is a cross section of a worm row that's about to be harvested. So you got some fungal growth on top. That is wonderful news. That's a sign of healthy soil. And you can see the mycelium, then these white lines that look like roots. Those are actually not roots. It's an organism called mycelium. It's kind of like the nervous system, if you will, of the fungal rhizome in the soil. So this is the pathway that sends all the messages, carries hormones, as well as actual materials and messages through that layer of the soil. And then it actually attracts other microbes that come and feed, and they add sugars to the soil, and it's all this big loop called the soil food web. So 4 to 12 months until we get to this stage, depending on when it started. If we started in the winter, then we're looking at close to 12 months if we start at the beginning of winter. The worms don't move around a whole lot in the winter. They cuddle together and make lots of babies. So then I'm gonna get to the pictures here so you can see what's going on. This first picture here is a handful of the finished worm poop. It's called worm castings. That's what people use. They either put that right in with their root ball, or they make teas out of it, or they use it as a top dressing just around the top surface roots for the plant. We also use those worm castings to make our teas. We have a truck bed water container basically, and we use it as a sprayer. We have a special sprayer and super long hose that we can go park in someone's driveway, go out to their gardens and use this natural fertilizer. Again, it's about adding life to the soil. That's what these castings add. This is just a picture of our soil bags. They actually look a little bit different now. This is last year. So we have 4 or 5 actually now different types of soil we sell, seedlings all the way up to set it and forget it mixes. And then there's just a picture of our tea that we use if people want a small batch, but mostly now we do the backyard spraying. And so why spend all this time with the worms? They increase yield. They're safe for kids and pets in terms of a fertilizer. The worm castings, they increase the fertility of the soil in general. It doesn't stink like other fertilizers. It's not toxic. It won't burn your plants. It increases aeration and soil structure, so you don't get as much compacting and then need to till, which then tilling releases carbon dioxide into the air. So the less tilling we have to do, the better for the environment. It also holds a ton of water. Worm castings hold water for a very long time, which reduces water use. And then they're full of the life down here. You can't see that very well, but beneficial microbes are the reason. So what that translates to us in the end market as a public or company here, private company, I mean. Conventional compost, if we weren't to use worms, we could sell it by the yard for about $30 to $40. Some places actually sell it cheaper, like $20. So instead, when we put it through the worm's gut and we add all that biology, we can actually sell it for up to $500 per cubic yard. So it's much, much more valuable because of all these different things that it can do for the environment. So it comes down to the money. We can make something that is environmentally beneficial, become both economically viable and healthier for our consumers. One thing we practice at Wormies on a very small scale is called biochar. That is, you use pyrolysis. This is a fancy word for meaning you have a fire with very little oxygen. So you're controlling the amount of oxygen that can get into the fire, and that way you are also controlling the amount of methane in some ways, and as well as the amount of carbon that gets burned. So when you're burning stuff, and what down here in the bottom right, you can see my real small, this is called a retort. There's actually a barrel inside of that barrel. So it's actually a 2-barrel system. And then that way the gas that comes out of the inner barrel goes through the fire and gets burned. So we're burning the methane. There are many ways of doing it. This is very small scale what I do. But you can see this is mostly sassafras from my backyard. It's a bunch of dead sassafras trees. That is a wildfire hazard actually. And by doing pyrolysis, we can actually sequester the carbon and put it in the soil for hundreds to thousands of years. So because the that form of carbon stays in the ground for so long, it's actually considered a permanent form of carbon sequestration. On this scale that I'm doing it here, I'm capturing about 50% of the original carbon then remains in this, what you see in my kiddie pool, which is called the biochar. So you're about 50% of the original carbon then is sequestered permanently. And those of you, I can take you back to 7th grade science class, which I used to teach. The carbon cycle, plants are taking carbon out of the atmosphere. It breaks down through their roots and into the soil, and eventually it adds back to the atmosphere, and the cycle continues. So through decay, it goes back into the atmosphere. But by making this biochar, we stop the decay process. We freeze that char in this carbon form, or this carbon in the char form rather, and then we bury it in the soil. And again, it could last thousands of years. Those of you who have seen documentaries like The Need to Grow or Kiss the Ground, they're talking about biochar in those, and they actually do it on a much larger scale where they can then burn this wood, they capture the gas, they introduce hydrogen and then burn the gas, and they use that as a fuel to then power their operations. This is actually already happening in the United States on both coasts. I don't know of anywhere here in the Midwest doing it yet, but it's already happening here in our country at least. So this, in our line, is more about, we want to be environmental stewards. And we also use this char then in our soil mix because it's so porous, it's a great habitat for our microbes. So we can actually add life to that carbon, put it back into our soil mix, and then it actually provides more life, more vegetation, and the cycle continues. More vegetation pulls down more carbon, and it continues that carbon sequestration mission. This is something fairly new in terms of the way it's being practiced today, but this is how the Terra Pratus soils were made in South America. They are notorious for their fertility. They have like meters deep of just black gold soil, beautiful soils. And that's a result of some of their practices with biochar over there. The other thing that is a little bit unique that we use, and I mentioned earlier, is called Bokashi. So here you see the spent beer grain. So after the brewers use it, it's all wet and clumpy. We bring it here and we spread it out and dry it. Once it's completely dry, we add lactobacillus. It's lab is what it's called. Typically, it's a bacteria that will decompose food in an anaerobic situation. So we don't need oxygen in this case. What we do is we take the lab inoculated bokashi, the finished grain, and we mix it with a whole bunch of food scraps. We put it inside a garbage bag, and this is small scale. We put it inside a garbage bag and then inside a big garbage can, fill the garbage can with water to make sure no air can get in. And we made ourselves our homemade anaerobic digester. So this is something people can do in apartments that don't have backyards, things like that for composting. So this is all stuff I already talked about. So the confusing thing is that the process and the end product both have the same name. It's both called bokashi. So it gets to be a little bit confusing there. But here's a picture of my garden. You can see this kind of looks like a fungal growth. This is actually bacterial growth from the bokashi, and that is doing a similar thing where it's breaking down the minerals, breaking down the different elements of the soil and making it so the plant can use it as food. So we use it again in our soil mixes to add biodiversity. And last but not least, this is where we want to go as we scale. This is an example of a bay house. What you can't see is that there are pipes running through the concrete, and then there would be a fan in the back that powers air through those pipes, ventilating these piles so that no tractor is needed until it's time to empty. What we're looking to do is go 5 times our current operation. That would be 4 of these bays that are 8 feet wide, 8 feet high, and 10 feet deep. That would put us at 190 cubic yards of organic waste we could process per month. So that's where we're looking to go. Right now we're doing only about 30 cubic yards per month now that we don't have schools this year. So we're a little bit lower than we used to be. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of people during the pandemic, and we are now back up where we were with a lot of new customers, different customers than we had before. So we got cut almost in half, and now we're back where we started. So our supply has kind of fluctuated. But eventually, this is what we'd like to be able to do, scale to be able to have something like this. And something like this is something we've been talking about kind of on the side with the city of Saugatuck and other places both public and private partners that we could potentially partner with in the future. So that's about it, I think, for me.
Very good.
See?
Questions? Yeah, let's open it up for questions for Jim from this crew. Part of when we first got started, and our whole focus has been with recycling, and now adding on the composting, is to do what we can to reduce trash, if you will, on the front end, to actually reduce it on the end, and teaching people how to, of course, purchase better, but then also how to recycle and even compost some of the materials, so that by the time they take a bag to the trash can, it's pretty small. And this is yet another means for us, I think, as a committee, to begin to help educate folks to really reduce our end waste, if that makes sense. So questions for Jim. Jim, this is wonderful, and we'll talk a little bit about what's up with the city of Saugatuck.
Okay.
Go for it. Anybody?
So Jim, how much, so your customers sort of subscribe or enroll with Wormies, and so what is the cost to them?
So for like a residence, like a household, that would be
Yeah.
$14 per month.
Okay.
And that's 2 pickups. We would like to get that down cheaper, but unfortunately in Grand Rapids, where we are right now, everyone is so spaced out. It's a big city, so we do a lot of driving. We're actually moving, we're applying for a grant right now where we'd be setting up drop-off sites with farmers markets and different CSAs. So that's kind of the model we would try to incorporate more as we move towards the lakeshore, more of the drop-off sites. That way we could do it for much more affordably for our customers. And then we might still offer a curbside for people who just can't get out or whatever, but we would try to shift more towards like a site drop-offs and collection sites. Our larger commercial customers, that varies quite a bit, but we charge $10 for the first 20-gallon bin, and then $7 for each one that comes after it per pickup. Some of those are putting out, like the juice bar, we might get 6 of those 20-gallon bins per week or so. So it just depends on the business. But for the families, it's $14 per month right now.
Thanks.
What kind of things can they put in it?
Well, at our scale right now, we ask our residents not to put in, or our customers not to put in any meat or eggs. We do take egg shells, but not the eggs themselves. That is more based on the greenhouse that we're in, because a raccoon could just slice right through our roof, if you will call it such. It's basically a thin piece of plastic. So we're careful about what we put in there more, because we don't want to attract larger predators into our area. If we had a secure location, we could take meat, we could take bones and things like that, but that would be something we do on a smaller scale, because that takes much longer to break down. But right now we ask just that they don't put any meat, bones, no cheese or eggs, except for the eggshell. And then of course, no plastics and things like that.
Go ahead.
Jim, I know that you sell a lot of your product to marijuana growers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just interested, is there a demand from more traditional farmers, or is there, are you all looking to have like more of an educational component too, that tries to kind of persuade farmers who are relying on traditional methods of getting rid of pests to move to composting as a means of doing that?
Yes, originally, well, maybe not originally, but once the laws changed, our main customer did become the cannabis grower, whether it's marijuana or hemp that falls under cannabis. That was our main customer for about 1.5 years, and that has fallen to maybe be 30% of our customer this year. Now our main customer is the backyard gardener. Now, originally, cannabis growers really understood the worm and worm castings. So they're actually teaching us about our product. But now it is the backyard gardener that seems to be the most interested and wants to be part of this kind of sustainable cycle that we're creating. So this year, I would say it's about 70% backyard or a little bit larger farmers. Some people kind of doing permaculture is what we call it, and regenerative farming. And then We do educational outreach things. We're at Frederick Meyer Gardens. I think this summer we're doing 8 different events there. We started to collaborate with Blandford Nature Center last year. That got shut down with COVID. We go in and out of schools quite a bit back before COVID as well. And then of course we got this pop-up on the 24th where we try to encourage backyard composting. In terms of changing the farmer's mind, we do post quite a bit of educational things, and we try to collaborate with people who think the same way as us. That usually isn't the case, though the majority of people don't have any idea what we're doing, and it's a big educational process for each one. So we kind of steer them towards the Rodale Institute. They're fantastic for composting and natural farming. Did I miss another question in there?
No, I think you hit it all. Thank
Okay.
you.
Can you use the T's for long-term restorative fields that are high clay content or other soil inadequacies?
Yeah, for that, I would probably use compost in general and with a combination of biochar for soil structure, erosion control, adding, that organic layer of topsoil back to the farm. See, a lot of times you have so much erosion from the tilling, so much of it blows away or then washes away that there's not much left. So rather than the T's for that situation, I would probably use compost and a combination of biochar with compost. T's are more for introducing the life to the soil. It's like a microbiology, like induction into the soil, basically. So it's not so much for soil stabilizing and building soil like that. It's more for adding life to the soil.
So Jim, on Saturday, you will educate folks on how to actually set up an actual backyard composting bin, how to construct it, what they need, all that kinds of stuff.
Yep. So Saturday the 24th, I'll be going over how to set up a geobin, which is what I prefer to use just because they're so easy to set up and move around. It's basically a long piece of plastic with tons of holes in it, and then you wrap it to the size you want. So I'll be setting up the geobin. That's a combination of like a decay bin or a hot bin, depending on if you have enough material to get it hot or not. And then I'll also be doing the urban worm bag. The urban worm bag would be more for people who don't have the space in the backyard but still want to compost. We have people who do that in their classroom and use the urban worm bag right in their own kitchen or in their basement. So that's for people who don't want to or don't have the space outside or that want to make their own worm castings.
All right, very good. And that 312 Ferry Street address is the old Calico Kitchen, y'all. It's that now open space. So for anybody who didn't understand that address, that's what we're talking about. Cool. Yeah, thumbs up. All right. Anything else for Jim? I know, Jim, you've got to go pick up some kids, I believe.
Got 7 minutes.
All right. All right. Very good. And thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate your time. Woohoo.
Thank you.
And your efforts on our behalf. So thank you. All right. I'm going to shift then over to Ken, who's been extremely patient. Most of you will recall that when we first got together last April, Ken did a wonderful presentation for us on kind of really basically what he'd been doing with the city of Holland and all their recycling. And a portion of that was an actual recycling audit that they did. So, we've come so far in the year, and at that time it was like information. And now I actually see us being to the point where we can begin to think about actually doing something similar. It is one of our kind of goals for the year, this next year. So with that, I'll hush and turn it over to Ken. And thank you so much, Ken.
Great, thank you very much. And Lori and I went to Wormies this morning and met with Jim, and so we got a chance to see that operation. I know several of you also did that. And I did share with Daniel and with Garn the composting information, which I'll also share with you, Jim, and send to Lori. DIY building your own bin and that basic compost 101 information that I use. So, and you're welcome to share that with anybody. There's no copyright to that or anything. So that's available for everyone. So with that, let me share my screens. And as you can see, I was just opening up some places to send some messages to. So let me move some things around here a minute. I've got 2 slideshows here. And here's the one for the city. Move a couple things around here. Okay, so this was the information for the city of Holland. And I've got one also, the one that we did for Black River schools too. So you can see how it can be done. It's really the same process, just done on a larger scale and a smaller scale. And I did the it was in 2019, we did Black River School, Calvary Church up on Beeline, and also Christ Memorial Church too. So we did same process with all of those. So I'm not going to go necessarily through the terminology and everything here, but I just wanted to see that we went through a full process, and this is the final presentation that was given to City Council about what the process was that we went through. So this was the Materials Management Task Force for the City of Holland, and the reason that was established was in early 2018 when China cut everyone off and said, we're not accepting any more of your recycling because there was such an incredibly high level of contamination in the materials we were sending to other places. So we knew that when our supply line was cut off, we then needed to find a place to recycle many of our materials. Local recyclers, and I say local meaning Michigan, Midwest, Great Lakes area, would not accept a lot of our materials. They were just too highly contaminated. In the old process, the physical line where materials were being moved down the line at Chef at the time, they were physically sorting that out. And again, it could be pretty contaminated, meaning there could be food stuff on it, there could be mixture of materials, and they were being accepted. Well, when it was cut off, they had to be clean, and our materials were way too dirty. So only about what we discovered was in our yellow bag system, which was working pretty well, as weird as the system was, it was working reasonably well. But when we literally dove into it, we found that it was a high level of contamination and not much of it was being recycled. So here's a little bit of the timeline. We identified the baseline for the program 2016 and 17. We entered into a new contract with the Republic in 2018. They had taken over shortly before that Chef, and they were honoring the contract. They needed to honor the contract, so we were still using the yellow bag system. And at that same time, then our cutoff from China and other sources. So we knew we needed to conduct our waste audit to find out what's actually happening so we could make recommendations to the city council and to city staff. And we also knew that we had entered into a new contract, so there was an agreement that the contract could be amended with some negotiation, of course, in there, and Republic would honor that contract until the time there was something new came along. So they were part of the Materials Management Task Force the whole time. So representatives from that included city council representatives, staff, Republic, someone from the Kent County Recycling who lives in Holland but works for Kent County Recycling, a member of PADNOS, 2 members of PADNOS, one is a city council member and another member, and a couple of citizen representatives. I sat on the committee not officially, but I was city employee at the time, and they said, you have a little background in this, go ahead and sit in on it, that's fine. So again, not an official designee, but I was in most of those meetings. So this is what the audit looked like. So we actually took, we have 5 routes in the city of Holland. So Monday through Friday routes. And so we took 1 truck from each one of those routes each day for 5 days. And we took, as you can see, the front end loader there, the big claw, getting ready to grab a large load from each of those trucks. So we're really doing just a random sampling of those trucks, grabbing a large amount, and we brought it over to another facility on Republic's property. And this, as you can see, the pile is way down. This was a much larger pile. And as you can see, things are being sorted. We sorted, we identified it, we weighed it, and then we documented everything that we did. So we were able to break this all down into different categories and different materials. And this was all done by hand. So one day I was there doing it. Another day the city manager was there. Several city council members got in there and did it on another day. So there were staff, volunteers, Republic workers were there, of course, helping out. So this was our way of getting a sampling for 5 days in a row, same size sampling for each truck, and then identifying what was in what was in that truck. What we did with this also is, because our system had the yellow bags being commingled with the waste stream, the whole idea was that in the past, again, they could sort things out and sort through a lot of that material. So we actually took the material that wasn't in yellow bags. We took yellow bags and we identified yellow bags that were still intact, full integrity, yellow bags that were broken open, and then things that were completely spilled out. So we looked at all three of those different categories to find out what was in the waste stream on a weekly basis, on an average. So this, and I sent this to Garn and to Daniel, so you can share this presentation, these PDFs with everybody. And again, I'm not going to ask you to go through all the details on it, but the blue is cardboard, the orange is paper, the non-recyclable is going to be the gray, or the contaminated or waste stream. So again, you don't need to go through all of this, but I wanted you to see how we did break this down quite a ways. And going a little, this one again, showing the what turned out to be the yellow was 17% of what we had in there was recyclable. So that was our big discovery. I'll show you some other rates and some other percentages in just a moment. This was how we broke it down even further. So again, paper, cardboard, mixed plastics, organic material, recycled but not in yellow bags, metal. So again, this was broken down in many, many different categories. And even the sorting was done down to things that were down to an inch. I think we stopped at an inch and said, we're not sorting any further than that. So it was organic material. It was, there was lots of weird stuff in there and ugly stuff, but we were there doing it. So we were happy to do that. So the contents of the yellow bags, again, we broke down each of these things to say, okay, if we have a yellow bag and it's intact, what's in it? So cardboard, paper, and again, it's all broken down. And then we broke that down into percentages. So we had, so it says composition of residential solid waste at, so yellow bag and general refuse combined, and then yellow bag materials only, separated all of those out. And you can see that when it was in those, just the top line says mixed paper. So when it was combined, we had 9.8% of it was possibly recyclable or part of that content. In the recycled one, intact, 27% of that was mixed paper, that was recyclable. So we were able to look at what was in there as opposed to the general refuse altogether or yellow bag itself. So again, breaking that down. And then assessment of the yellow bags, just a general, mostly empty, ripped, or intact. So then the other part was we took 1 week and they drove around each of the routes and took 50 bags randomly from the neighborhoods and grabbed those and then did the sorting of what was in an intact yellow bag. And there were pretty good results. We had, I think the numbers are here. So this is, let me see. So the yellow bag in good condition, it shows the condition, the rate of the percentage of recycling rate. So that percent recycling rate is actually, we have about almost a 53% participation in recycling in the city of Holland. We are second only to Emmett County in the whole state for participation. Now, again, what was being recycled in the end was 17%, but participation was very high. So people were, again, they were trying to do the right thing. And so there was good participation there. So again, you can look at this in detail as you go through this slide presentation. that I've sent to you, you can go through all of this in detail. And then we were looking at comparative recycling rates. So St. Paul, Ann Arbor, Portland, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and we were at 52.8%. This is what other cities were and areas were experiencing. So here's that exceptionally high participation rate, high failure rate of yellow bags. So they see trends in recycling contamination consistent with other communities. So we weren't different than other communities. Just our system was not working. It could, but wasn't working. So this was the final slide with that, with the program takeaways. So the results were that we decided that the carts were going to be the best system because that works best. And again, we all kind of knew that going into this, but as Mike Trethewey, one of the city council members who also works for Padnos, and Mike and I were city council members together many years ago when this program started. So he said, I'm not ready to write off the yellow bags until you can prove to me. And then finally at one point he said, okay, fine. Yellow bags, we got to do something different. We just can't do this anymore. So he gave into it and said, yes, let's do something different. So the cart system, and the carts are actually just started being delivered this week around the city of Holland. And the complaint level is very high. From my friend Dan Broersma, who took over my position at the city, is overseeing all this. And he says, I really would like to be back on that beach again I was at last week. But he said, I'm answering a lot of questions and fielding a lot of calls right now. So this is, so that's the one for the city of Holland. Let me show you just a quick one of the Black River School, what we did with that. And let me flip back here a moment. Excuse me for flashing the screen like this. Okay, so you can see in there one of our
And real quick,
yes.
Before you move on, so question for you and then maybe our group too. Have you, since you guys did this as your own entity in terms of the inspection for contamination, so did you ask at the time you were contracted with Republic?
Yes, we were.
Okay, so did you ask them if they have any plans to do inspections, much like what we heard Emmett County's doing on the regular, to ensure that we are recycling properly and we're upping the rates of what can be recycled?
Yes, and actually that's part of their contract, is being able to report back about recycling and about both waste stream and recycling. That is part of their contract. And we were actually getting reports like that from Chef, although we found out that they were not correct. So, or not accurate, I should say. So yes, it is part of their contract, and so they said, this is great. This helps us with our reporting also.
But they are not doing their own inspections. That's why your group was forced to do it.
Well, they were doing some of their own, but they were not, they weren't required to do that. So they have recycling systems all over the country. And so they were able to give us statistics on what is happening at other facilities with recycling, what happens, here's our process. And so they were able to give us some of that information already. We all knew that it was really difficult to get the information from Republic, not because they weren't willing to try something, but it was just the yellow bag system was so outdated, and that they just said, unless we jump in and do something like we did, we really weren't able to get accurate information.
Right.
So Ken, just to follow up on Kelly's questions, when we get to negotiating a new contract,
yes, that's where I was going.
This could actually be something that we request in a next contract with Republic. Right?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. And I think that as you're able to help them design that a little bit too, about what information are you looking for? How are we going to do that? Because your materials get mixed in with everybody else's materials, or is there a way to report out on this on a annual basis? Pick 5 days, pick 3 routes, whatever, 3 days and 3 routes, whatever you're doing, and do something like this also. I think it's worth asking them if that would be possible to put that in the contract, or saying or saying yes, we require some kind of analysis and some kind of reporting.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's where I was going, Garth. So thank you.
Sure. So this was done, as you can see, this was done in August. Actually, this was done a little bit earlier. Well, school was on, so we were doing this when school was on. And what we did is, as you can see, here's one of our local heroes here. Hannah's there, and her youngest sister's right here. But this was, and one of the things I really like about this crew is you'll notice there was only one guy there, and that was me doing this. All the rest were younger, and 7th and 8th and 9th graders all out there with their, well, not all of them had boots. None of them had boots on. One even had, sandals on out there sorting. So this was the crew, and this is how we started, because people were concerned about it. This is going to be really messy. It's going to be all over the place. So we put tarps out. We pulled the bags out of the bins. This is what it looked like. And this was the day, I think we did this on a Monday, which it was the day before their pickup. So we scheduled it be the day before their regular pickup. So we would have the maximum amount. They had did twice a week pickups at Black River. So this is what we did. We went through and sorted everything out. And again, these are some small piles here, but you can see a little bit of everything that's in there. And it was all done by hand. And they were right down in there picking this apart and sorting it all out. We did the same basic separation and inventory. And I'll show you an inventory sheet. So this is what it looked like. And this was the exact same process we used for both of the churches we did it with. And we had similar results in both places. But I just love the fact that they were just in there digging in. Of course, it had to be fun shots too. And this is what it looked like. And we bagged it all back up again and put it back in there. So we cleaned everything up afterwards. They did have a cardboard or a corrugated container. So we were able to find some things that were contaminated. So some of the pizza boxes were contaminated and some of them weren't. So, again, we were able to sort some of that out. Very happy crew afterwards, all cleaned up. And then, let me go back here. So this was a starting sheet, just an inventory sheet that I put together to say, this is what we're going to be looking at. So we had somebody with a clipboard just looking through here and seeing what we were going to do and what we were going to document. And what we came up with is compostable, recyclable, corrugated paper, metal, and recycling bin. And I think there's one more over there that might be landfill. So if the pictures are covering, if our images are covering that up, landfill is the last one. So what we came up with though is here are the percentages of what was in the container, and we came out with 70% of it could be diverted to compost or recycling, and 30% of it would go to landfill. So our goal was to convince them to switch over to some composting containers instead of the large waste containers. They could switch those out. There's still a lot of resistance there for wanting to do something different, but they did start a composting program, and Eighth Day Farms was one of the participants in that helped process that. The other thing that I did with them, and this is one of the things I do with all of the groups, is I also like to, and this is what Jim and I talked about, just locating something near some of these facilities, like a Wormies hub near here, is that near this school, so we've got Black River School is right here. Well, we have Holland Middle School is over here. There is Baker Lofts, which has a banquet center and catering facility. Mi Favorita grocery store, Petrino's Pizzeria. There's a church. It's Holland, so there's a church on every corner. So there are a lot of facilities that could be feeding a hub, literally feeding a hub in a place like this. So this is something that I did with each of the groups. Is each of the times that I did an audit, I said, okay, here's your facility. Now let's go up a ways and look at what's near you. So if we were to start something or work on a composting program of some kind, let's look at what's near you so we can consolidate efforts, consolidate resources, and make it more effective and more work better. Like Jim had been talking about, we need to make this be cost effective, and they need to make a profit on this too. So if it's done with a for-profit organization. So anyway, this is what we did with both of those, and all of the audits were very similar, whether it's a large scale or smaller. They were done very similar. And I will say that the Bill Stow from the Sustainable Research Group in Grand Rapids. Now Bill has officially sold his research company. I think he's still consulting with them, but it's Sustainable Research Group. And Bill Stow has been doing this for, well, I've been doing things with him for 20 plus years. And so he's been doing this a long time. He has lots of mechanisms and systems and processes in place to do audits and to do some global comparisons, local comparisons about how things are operating. So that's those two presentations right there.
Very good. Questions for Ken? So again, this is something that we were kind of introduced to a year ago and have since put it on our goals for the year. And so with that, questions? Go for it, Barry. And you're on mute. There you go. There you go.
And not so much a question, but this is something that has just been on the front of my mind since we started this whole thing about how do we measure if we're doing a good job or if we're not. And I've been just chomping at the bit to see Ken's presentation. And this is exciting to me because how can we make our community better? It's showing people what's happening. And I know that our community really does care, but unless they know what's going on, they can't make good decisions. So I'm really, really excited about this opportunity. Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. And built into our new cart system is I think a quarterly audit. I think it's a quarterly. So we will be going around town, and we now have a separate cart system. So which is I'm terribly excited about. So it'll be much easier to determine how we're doing by doing those random checks and looking in somebody's cart or taking a cart and leaving another one for them, whatever method we have to do with that. But it certainly will be a lot easier to analyze that.
Ken, who's doing your checks?
I think that's being built into the system right now. I don't think we've quite determined who's doing that, but I think it's actually going to be staff doing it.
So Holland City staff.
Yeah, whether it's interns or, if you call it an audit, it's much more exciting for an intern if they, but as long as you don't tell them it's a waste stream, analysis.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Do you have any database expectations? Would you expect very rapidly to get to the 50% that the clean, intact yellow bags did by going to the buckets? What are your expectations based on all the stuff that's gone on?
Sure. Well, we're actually expecting our goal is by the end of 2022 to be at 74%. So that's our goal. And we think that because we have such a high participation rate that it should not be hard to get to that because we've made it really easy. I mean, it's like, here's your cart, put everything in this cart, we'll take it away. And there will also, I think the reason that the participation rate will go up even more is that people can see it's not contaminated. They won't have the questions about, and it's dogged us since the program started, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, the yellow bags are they really recycling everything? And yes, they were doing a lot and doing pretty well, but this I think will bring the participation rate up because it will be literally a cleaner system.
I think this is a real opportunity to use our newspaper article.
Yep.
To inform everybody about how bad the yellow bag system was, because there's still a lot of grumbling. about
Yeah.
that whole situation, going to the tubs and A, and B, these expectations, as Barry was saying, are just exciting. And I think that could all be condensed down and it would make a big difference in how everybody's feeling about this.
Go ahead, Kelly.
And remind me again, where are you getting the numbers for participation?
This was again, a sampling of the neighborhoods to be able to find out how many yellow bags. And so this was an inventory around the community about how many yellow bags were being put in there for recycling. And then again, the physical audit driving around to find out the participants. They didn't do every household, but they would pick a certain number per route and determine that. So, and it was pretty consistent when they did that
Right.
over a couple of different times.
So the city did that, or Republic gave you those numbers?
The city did that.
Okay. Have we asked Jack Brown if he could do a database search and say, hey, because that would be wonderful if we actually knew.
Yeah.
I mean, I walk around the hill all the time. I see a lot of recycling bins, but I don't know. So it would be interesting to just have a baseline to say, hey, how many people do we think are participating? And then if we're going to do this contamination audit, to see then, okay, from that, what do we think we're at to set goals, or to, like Barry's point, to get some metrics behind this.
Yeah, and I think they should be able to come up with how many customers do they have in your area, how many customers have recycling, what percentage, so I think that, and then you can do that by, of course, population, say, okay, so many of our citizens have this service and this many of them are recycling. So I think that you should be able to come up with a pretty good number, and maybe even from another vendor too, that is in your area. Could they give you the same numbers?
Okay, I'll ask after we get done, I'll send a note to Jack. I think he's on vacation, but I'll send him a note and see if we can get that data. That'd be a good starting point. So real quick, Ken, I was curious, in the student group, I think I saw maybe 8. How many volunteers did you have help with the process for the City Holland?
I think there were probably about 25, because some of the people were there every day for the 5 days. And a number of us just kind of came in and participated on certain days. So, I can find out how many there are, but each day there were probably 6 to 8 of us there, besides the Republic people that were there also.
Got it. Okay. All right.
I wanted to say one other thing, that some commonality. It's interesting that Kelly, I know you're talking to Chris Spalding from Brewery Vivant in Grand Rapids, and Jim was talking about the castings coming from Brewery Vivant. And honestly, Chris Spalding, if you ever want to have someone speak to your group who knows the food industry really well, because she and her husband Jason own Brewery Vivant, Chris is honestly the person that started the sustainability conversation in our area probably 15 years ago, maybe 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago, right in there. She wrote the first report and brought it to the city of Holland. And I just found that original report just not too long ago. So Chris Spalding is one of the people that is at the top of the food chain when it comes to these subjects. High level of sustainability participation in their, the things that they're doing are phenomenal at Brewery Vivant, but she is one of the most knowledgeable people in this area.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
that's excellent.
Great idea, Ken. I'm actually talking to her tomorrow, so
Excellent.
if you guys are up for it, I will ask her if she'd like to talk with us.
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I know, Barry, your background in the beer industry. I know the Saugatuck Brewing Company. I think they have some farmers that usually take those castings, or what's it called again?
Spent
grain.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's.
Then they do tons and tons of it. It goes into silage for cattle feed. And it's like giving them money. I mean, it really stretches out their thing. Now, as far as grabbing it for recycling, if they've already made commitments to farmers, it's going to be tough. And that I don't know about Brewery Vivant. I know Jason and Chris very well from the brewing
Mhm.
industry.
Mhm.
And so, but if we can, divert some of that spent grain, Saugatuck Brewery is the 10th largest brewery in Michigan. So
Yeah.
a lot of it right here in our backyard.
Yeah. So back to Ken. So your audit process, literally from start to finish, a year, do you think? And setting it up and getting it organized and
Yeah,
presenting
we
to the
did.
city?
I think we did the first audits in September or October of 18,
Mhm.
and then we did the next one, the next round where we went and collected all the bags. Actually, they did two. They did one more at tulip time.
Mhm.
I think it was around that time. It was around tulip time.
Mhm.
So I think that's when they collected all the yellow bags and brought them back to the facility. So that was the second one. So the whole process was really 18 months between setting it all up, trying to come up with the process, then the data we needed to collect,
Mhm.
the method for doing it, of course, the reporting out. And Aaron Thalenwood was running the whole thing. He had a very active committee, like this committee. They met for 18 months, every 3 weeks for 18 months.
Wow. Yeah.
So they were able to really help him go through the process and answer a lot of questions and think through the process. And then it came down to, okay, here's the data. Council had to make its decisions, and that was another 60 days or so before they made those decisions.
Mhm.
And then it was the grant writing and applying for the grant. We had enough money to pay for the carts outright if we needed to, but it would be better if the state gave us money. Well, the state did. They paid for, I think it was 60% of it was state money, and another 15 to 20% was from the recycling partnership, and then the remainder the city paid for out
Yeah.
of
So
their recycling, their
yeah.
solid waste fund.
So this is kind of a good segue to some of the things, the good potential that is coming down the line legislatively from the feds, as far as recycling is concerned and composting. I think that's all part of the infrastructure bill that's going to work its way through the process. And you can chime in, Ken, as far as it's nothing set yet, but from everything I've been reading, there's some really wonderful opportunities coming down to smaller entities, if you will, like us, to help bolster recycling and composting in the state. So
Yeah.
stay
And that
tuned.
also is something that can be used for addressing climate change too. So it's, it's like everybody gets down to the recycling and composting because that's what they understand. But it's like this feeds beautifully into the conversation about climate change too, and
Yeah.
addressing climate change.
Go for it, Patrick.
I wonder if we could apply the process of bridge data on the Holland data versus ours, that basically in antimicrobial stuff, you can take a study like Holland's and do our study, but essentially truncate that study to statistically bridge into their data. And that might dramatically reduce the amount of sampling that we have to do. All we have to do is find somebody that is a good enough statistics person
Yeah.
to know how that should be done. But I mean, we're usually talking about 50 to 70% reduction in the physical sampling when you do a bridging between studies. So it could be a big deal. Ken, do you know anybody that's done anything like that?
I don't, but I would be glad to ask Dan Broersma and Bill Stow if there's anyone who's done something like that. And also a lot of the data that the methods that were used in the data is publicly available from the City of Holland too. So being able to grab that report from Sustainable Research Group as here's what they did, not to take away from them, but to say, here's a good base. And that's where this conversation all started, was us saying, hey, we have data already. Please don't start from zero. Let's start from somewhere and then add on to it and complete the process for your communities. And so I think that's again where this all started. So the city is happy to share that information. And with Dan Broersma being in that position, you have somebody who's really, really knowledgeable about the best ways to do that, because he also did that for Herman Miller for 19 years. And he also did that for Grand Valley State University for all the sporting events and large gatherings. They did a lot of that auditing process for them too.
Cool. Very cool. That would be nifty.
We've
Go
got-
ahead, Patrick.
We've got a person in our company that deals with this antimicrobial EPA stuff, and he might have some technical advice on how we go about figuring this out.
All right. If you want to follow up with him, Patrick, that would be fantastic.
You may give me a blank stare too. I'll talk to you.
All right, very good. I have a hard stop in 15 minutes. I've got another meeting to get on. So any other questions for Ken?
Ken, I just wanted to ask, so with your goal for Holland to have 74% participation, so it's logical to think that that can only benefit the Republic company in terms of their profit, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
You know, and it helps them because they're not having to spend time separating things out to be able to gain some revenue. There's revenue for them in the tipping fees, but there's also, if they have to sort material to make it recyclable, then that's just money out of their pocket directly. So this way, here's the material, it's mostly clean, let's get it recycled. You know, we've shortcutted their process.
Thank you.
And there's, as we know from our presentation with Emmett County, there is money in recycling. So big time. So very good. All right. Very good, Ken. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I'm going to move real quick and give you all an update on our Household Hazardous Waste Day and how that's coming about. A couple of the folks on here, Daniel, Demetria, Barry, I'm trying to think if anybody else was a part of that initial meeting. We have a small little group working on this, but basically the event's set for the 1st of May. I think you're well aware of that already. We've gotten wonderful, wonderful support from the municipalities, both the city of Saugatuck and the city of Douglas. Actually threw in more than I was asking for, which was absolutely wonderful. And then this evening with the township, I presented to them last month, and tonight they're deciding if they want to chip in as well. So from a financial perspective, we're looking really good. We're sitting really comfortable. We've also had a number of private donors, thank you, Patrick, who've and Kelly and a number of others who have donated, and we have about $2,000 that we've raised from private donations to put into that account as well. Peter Stanslawski, our treasurer for the city of Saugatuck, is managing all of that for us, which I greatly appreciate, and it takes me out of this whole money management deal. So tonight the township meets at 6, and I think I'm on the agenda. They've got a number of stuff on their agenda, but I'm going to hang around long enough to give them an update. The way that I set up this whole process in order to keep it pretty controlled, so we didn't just have everybody and their brother just showing up. I got some great advice from Kate Neese in Clinton County to basically limit it. So from 9 to noon, and limit the spots, 20 per every 15 minutes. And so that's exactly what I did. We have a total of 280 spots, and as of just a little bit ago, we have 54 spots left. So people are signing up. The municipalities have been tremendously helpful in getting the word out through the e-blasts. I've had it on Facebook and a variety of other, we had a great article in the Commercial Record about it, but I keep, every time I show up for a municipality meeting, I'm like, please encourage people to sign up for this so that they don't just show up that day. I imagine I'm still going to have some who are just like, I didn't know I had to show up, but if I can, as much as possible, keep that pretty controlled, we'll be well within our budget for that day. We have, I believe, 14 volunteers signed up. I could use a few more just to feel comfortable, but feeling pretty good about everybody. You know, almost everybody here on this committee signed up, and I really appreciate that as well. And then we'll feed all of the volunteers at Isabel's afterwards. So we'll take good care of everybody. Rana is taking care of all the swag, if you will, for lack of a better word. We'll have t-shirts, hats, and lanyards. The Rotary Club is covering all of that, as well as a banner that will show up under the pallet sign probably Friday or Saturday. So we're still continuing to get some good advertisement. And I do believe Ron also had a banner at the library as well on the screen. So yeah, that's about it in a nutshell. It'll be at the DPW. The fire department fully supported us with $1,000. So we've got good interest. It's good. Questions?
Great. Garn, real quick, I know you guys mentioned potentially doing some data collection for like surveying people on what their needs are and things like that. Are we still thinking we're going to do that?
Yes. Daniel, we were working on something, weren't we? Where you at? He disappeared.
I'm here. I have to get off the call in a second, but I
Okay.
did submit all those questions to Jim Sullivan, and he's going to create a monkey survey for us that volunteers are actually going to have on their phones. And so when people roll up, we'll be asking them about 5 questions. They're mostly yes and no. And then we'll be processing those. So nobody has to get out of their car or fill out anything. All volunteers will be doing it from their phone.
Okay, great. Is there any way we can do an opt-in for people to give their emails and things like that so we can actually create our own e-newsletter for what we have going on?
I've been collecting that on the sign-up sheet. That's
Okay.
part of the sign-up sheet.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I wasn't going to lose that opportunity.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
Good.
Yeah. Barry, I saw you wiggling. Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I'm moving around. So we had a discussion about if we spend less than we have in, funds, what are we going to do with those excess funds?
If we have enough, I'd like to do another one in November, quite honestly, end of October, November. So I think, and that's looking really doable. But we have a committee to decide that, and we'll do that after the event, see what we've got left.
So we'll hang on to the money and use that towards a additional
yes
collection.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Demetria.
I got information to Rana about developing a cheat sheet for ongoing recycling throughout the area for all of those drivers that pull up will, get that and be able to hand that to them.
Great. Great. Thank you. Yeah, I will, Peter Stanislawski, now that he knows we're up to this, he sent me an article from, oh shoot, I can't remember what county, but they had a little article that showed up in their paper a couple days before their actual event that basically said, okay, Household Hazardous Waste Day, here's what you can bring, here's what you can't bring, here's how it works. You don't get out of your car, the whole thing. And I also plan to, through the Sign Up Genius, it's so wonderful because you can send a block, a group email, and I'm going to include those directions as well. Basically, do not get out of your car. I have had a question, Styrofoam. People can bring Styrofoam. They will take it. So I also have a number of people who've contacted me about bringing a lot of old gasoline. So, and we've made some arrangement with some folks who are bringing quite a bit of old gasoline, like 100 gallons of old gasoline. We've made arrangements with Drug and Lab Disposal to split the difference with them because that's a lot of gasoline. And so one individual who contacted me, they're helping us split the cost for that, which is nice. And they're like, okay, and they got a check to Peter to cover half the cost, which was really nice because that we would reach maximum capacity pretty quickly if everybody showed up with these old big 50-gallon drums of gasoline. So, and that's that. All right. With that, anything else? Any news for the good of the order? Linda, yes, you're on mute, hon. There you go.
Thanks. I just want to say thank you to anybody ahead of time who sends mom a birthday card.
Yeah.
Again, it's May 11th. I think I've been thinking May 10th all day and it's the 11th. So thank you very much.
Very good. 90 years. That's awesome.
And
Very
still living on her own.
And still living
With
on
a
her
little
own.
bit of help, but she's still on her own.
That's right. Very
Woman
good.
wears lipstick every day.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to move us to public comment. I see we have one guest that joined us. Any comments from the public? Raise your hand. Nothing. Quiet as can be. All right. Any other notes, words from our committee members? Nope. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Second.
Seconded.
All right. I'll take the roll. Linda,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Kathy. She's on there still somewhere.
Yes.
Demetria,
Yes.
Daniel. I might have lost him.
Oh, he's gone.
Lori,
Yes.
and Patrick. All right. Thank you so much. Ken, thanks for your time. Really appreciate
you.
it.
Yep, my
Bye,
pleasure.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye.